privatization. The 80s, beginning in the 80s, you have an era of privatization. That is to say, the encroachment on ever larger areas of the economy to produce profit as opposed to simply producing that which human beings need in order to survive. And so, how many of you remember when healthcare wasn't privatized to the extent that it is now? When you could actually go into a hospital and get treatment without them demanding to see your HMO card first. Now, healthcare has been thoroughly commodified. It is just another commodity that has value just like your refrigerator. It's no different. And talking about that, education. You know, nowadays in a private university, $40,000 is cheap for tuition. You know? And isn't that bizarre? I mean, if you think about it really seriously, of course we know that education costs money. But if you think about the fact that education, which really ought to be available to every human being, every child ought to have the opportunity to realize his or her own potential. Every child ought to have the opportunity to learn at a very young age that the acquisition of knowledge can be a wonderful thing. If that were the case, believe me, if that were the case, we would not have 2.3 million people behind bars today. While I'm speaking about that, I should say that we have no public mental health care system in this country. And if you look at the numbers of people in prison who have intellectual disabilities or who have been rendered mentally disabled as a result of the time they spend in prison. I was talking about privatization. Since the 80s, the system of punishment has been thoroughly corporatized and thoroughly privatized. Now, I'm not suggesting that every single corrections agency is privately owned and operated. No, not by any means, although there are many prisons that are owned and operated by companies like Corrections Corporation of America, which is the largest private prison corporation in the world, which owns and operates prisons all over the world, literally. Wackenhut, there are many other private prison corporations that are using punishment to reap profit. But I'm not only talking about that, I'm talking about the extent to which prisons and they hold now some 2.3 million people on any given day, are dependent on contracts contracts for services, for goods. How much soap do you think 2.3 million prisoners use? So what about the contracts with the soap companies? What about the food? What about the clothes? What about the few things that they're able to have, like televisions or radios? They're whole industries whole cottage industries that have developed precisely to produce goods for people in prison. In California, for example, you're not allowed to have any kind of, say, television or radio or any kind of appliance that is not transparent. And somebody came up with this idea when, maybe you remember when Apple produced this computer you could see through, you could see the innards, you remember that? And so somebody said, oh great, this is a perfect idea, we'll produce objects like this that can be sold to prisoners. And so California then developed a regulation that all the prisoners had to turn in all of their appliances and buy new ones from this company that makes transparent. So, I mean, you see the extent to which the punishment system is interwoven with the capitalist system, even when you don't have private prison corporations running the prisons. But there are many private prison corporations, as I was saying. As a matter of fact, if you go to Hawaii, you will discover that prisoners are disproportionately Native Hawaiian, and that makes sense. All over the world, they're disproportionately Aboriginal, disproportionately people from the globe in the South, disproportionately black people, and in this country, of course, disproportionately black people, disproportionately Latinos. But in Hawaii, their prison overcrowdedness problem was solved by farming the prisoners out, sending them to a prison in a town called Eloy, Arizona. Now, you probably never heard of Eloy. It's a small town. And Corrections Corporation of America built a prison in Eloy, Arizona, specifically for Hawaiian prisoners. And then they began to boast about the fact that they have someone there who is an expert in Hawaiian culture, and, you know, and it goes on and on and on. And then what was interesting, I discovered last year, that right across the street from this prison that houses Hawaiian prisoners, Corrections Corporation of America was building a prison to house California prisoners. Because California's prison system is in crisis, total crisis. As a matter of fact, the situation is so bad that a federal judge, Felton Henderson, placed the whole healthcare system in the California corrections and, well, Arnold Schwarzenegger calls it corrections and rehabilitation. I don't know why he calls it rehabilitation, because there's no rehabilitation happening there. But that was one of the solutions, to ship California prisoners out to Arizona. So, yeah.